Hi, Dr. Marian Cintron here. I'm going to continue reading from the Essiac Report, which is right here. I hope you purchase it so that you can be reading all the information. I recently had my blood work done, and the cancer marker 125C is the lowest, is very low. The range is from 0 to 38, and I had a low 7. And Essiac is what I'm doing with drinking my vegetable juices, my antioxidants, and taking Juice Plus capsules, and trying to eat as healthy as I can, and exercising and resting. So I want to go ahead and read. In August of 1938, 6 physicians with expertise in the treatment of cancer were named as members of the newly formed Royal Cancer Commission. And it lists the name of them, Dr. Wallace, so many names, okay? And they're doctors. So Dr. W.C. Wallace and Dr. T.H. Callahan were promptly sent to Bracebridge to interview Rene's parents. Rene was delighted at the prospect. She had nothing to hide, and as she had stated in the legislature, her clinic was wide open for anyone to investigate. To a person, every one of the doctors interviewed gave a glowing report of their treatment with the Essiac, but it didn't really matter. The purpose of the interviews was a little more than a formality, an insignificant prelude to the main event. Early in March 1939, public hearings got underway at the Royal Oak Hotel in Toronto, Canada, before the full Cancer Commission. Rene rented one of the hotel ballrooms to accommodate the 387 patients who accompanied her to support her. For reasons never fully explained, the Royal Commission allowed just 49 to testify. The testimony found in the court transcripts of those patients allowed to speak on Rene's behalf gives a vivid picture of what happened during the Inquisition. All of Rene's patients who were allowed to testify were absolutely convinced that the Essiac had helped them recover from cancer. Some of them told of partial recoveries, others of miraculous recoveries after they had been given up as hopeless by the medical establishment. George Mahan testified, "She helped me. If it was not for her, I would be buried." Elizabeth Stewart testified, "After treatment by Nurse Cassie, I'm working every day. I milk 5 cows night and morning. I'm right off to the farm and have boarders and all in my house. And I do it all myself. And I owe my life to Miss Cassie. And I hope you do this, and I hope you will do something for her." Annie Bonar, who had been diagnosed by biopsy at the St. Michael's by Dr. E. Shannon, who said she had cancer of the uterus and bowel, testified, "My cancer had spread after radium treatments until my arm had swelled to double its size and turned black. I went down from 150 pounds to 90 pounds and then entered St. Michael's to have my arm amputated, but changed my mind on the eve of the operation and went to Bracebridge instead. After 4 months on the Essiac treatment, my arm had returned to normal size and I've gained 60 pounds. Oh, isn't that just amazing? John Thornbury testified that his wife had been diagnosed by X-ray 2 previous years as having probable cancer of the stomach. She was so weak then, at about 72 pounds, she had to be carried to the Bracebridge Clinic. Miss Thornbury testified herself to the Royal Commission that I now weigh 107 pounds and can do all of my work. She lived to be 91 years old, and she died in 1975. The other patients allowed to testify gave similar reports of dramatic recovery. None of it mattered. The commissioners simply dismissed most of what they heard as improper original diagnoses. Some doctors even denied their own previous diagnoses in letters sent to Dr. R.T. Noble, registrar of the College of Physicians and Surgeons. When their recantations were presented in court as evidence against Essiac's effectiveness, Rene's lawyer exploded, implying that there had been so much pressure applied for the doctors to abandon their earlier findings. He said, if this matter of diagnosing is done so sloppily, there should probably be a commission to investigate that. Rene would later state, in the 49 cases examined by the Ontario Cancer Commission, the majority of these had more than the diagnosis of one doctor. Some had 3 or 4 doctors and were told that they had cancer and were treated for malignancy before coming to me for treatment. During the hearing, several patients described the horror of radium burns and surgery. Almost all of them have been pronounced as terminal. Many sought Rene only after suffering a reoccurrence following radium or surgery. Dr. Guyat, the anatomist of the University of Toronto, was finally allowed to testify. He said, I'm satisfied that the patients I saw at Bracebridge were definitely receiving benefit. I would not say it was a cure because a cure of cancer means 25 years, but certainly there has been great benefit to those cases. He then went to describe his considerable experience in diagnosing cancer and stated that the cases he observed had been diagnosed properly. Nearing the close of the hearing, the chairman declared, what Nurse Cassie is asking us to do is pass on his case histories to us, his case histories she had given us without the board having any knowledge of what substance contains or the theory of its operation or administration. Exactly, responded Rene's lawyer. After a rather lengthy heated debate between Rene's lawyer and the commissioner about her refusal to turn over her formula, Commissioner Vallon said, you are seriously, I think, prejudicial to your cause in not revealing your formula. We may be favorably impressed. We don't know. As far as we've gone, we cannot tell. There may be something in it, says Dr. Guyat. He thinks it is something which should be investigated further. That is what he suggested, to have some independent investigator go ahead, and he appeals to the Ontario Medical Society to have it investigated. That his impression that he is a disinterested party, he's not biased, we feel we should like to pursue our observations further. That is the reason why we want the formula. And Rene was going to give it to them, except they were going to bury it. So with that, the Inquisition was far from being over. 2 weeks later came the testimony from the doctors opposing Rene. This testimony mattered a great deal. It possessed the vehemence and zeal worthy of the medical establishment's concerted effort to find out the truth. Rene listened patiently as Dr. Richards and Dr. Noble tried to tear her treatment apart. Many patients had not benefited at all from Essiac, they insisted, and some had even died. Imagine that. Essiac couldn't cure everybody. Rene responded in kind. A great number of these cases are hopeless cases who came to me perhaps for treatment, and I tell them, I did not tell the patient, but I tell the family that it is hopeless, and I cannot do anything other than possibly give them comfort. If they care to take a few treatments, they do so. And if they go away and die, then these records go against me. So the Commissioner Vallon challenged, apparently you say you cannot cure an advanced case? And Rene snapped back, no, I did not say that. If the organs are destroyed, yes, I cannot build new bodies. Some of the reports submitted by opposing physicians actually admitted that their former patients claimed to have received benefit from Essiac, at least in the area of pain reduction. In fact, almost all the hospital reports submitted mentioned Essiac's ability to reduce pain. But these were post-mortem reports, and Essiac's ability to reduce pain was only mentioned briefly. Pain relief was not the issue. The issue was to crush Rene. Finally, a tired and weary Rene said to the commissioners, Dr. Noble and Dr. Richards are both bringing up a lot of patients whom I took on for pity's sake. They're not taking up my proven cases, which have benefited. A great number of these patients came for 1 or 2 treatments and never came back. I could not save them. I did not want to take them at all, because I knew the cases were hopeless. Every case was given up by the medical profession even before I took it on. The commission was ready to play their trump card. They knew if they asked Rene for her formula, she'd refuse. Her refusal would be prima facie evidence that Essiac is no real merit. After all, why else would she refuse to allow her discovery to be analyzed by the proper authorities? Surely it would be exposed as a hoax when seen in the divine light of modern medical science. They asked Rene if she would submit her formula. Once again, she told them she would not turn over the formula because she believed it would immediately be shelved as worthless. In her words, I want to know that suffering humanity will benefit by it. When I cannot be given that assurance, I am willing to disclose my formula, but I have got to know that it is going to get to the suffering humanity. Chairman Gillanders said he wouldn't admit to any of the merit before receiving the formula. No one would budge. In December 1939, a commission delivered its interim report to Parliament. It stated in the cases where diagnosis had been by biopsy or was only 1 recovery with Essiac and 2 improvements. In cases diagnosed by X-ray, 1 recovery was attributed to Essiac, 2 were improvements. In clinically diagnosed cases, 2 recoveries were attributed to Essiac and 4 improvements were noted. The commission felt that there were at least 3 wrong diagnoses, up to 10 questionable ones, and 4 that were not conclusive. Only 11 were accepted. Out of the 11, 5 cures were attributed to previous radium treatments. One of them was Miss Arnie Bonar, who had been faced with amputation of her arm after a year of radiation and X-ray treatments. She had recovered, and it certainly couldn't have been from the simple tea made from the plants, could it? It was the radium, they said, that delivered Mrs. Bonar, the commission concluded. So Rene had this to say: it's my opinion that the hearing of my case before the Cancer Commission was one of the greatest farces ever perpetrated in the history of man. Over 380 patients came to be heard, and the commission limited the hearing to 49 patients. Then in their report, they stated that I had only taken 49 patients to be heard, that the X-ray reports were not acceptable as a diagnosis, and that the 49 doctors had made wrong or mistaken diagnoses. It is a sad state of affairs if doctors can diagnose an affliction as cancer and send the patient home with a few months at most to live if they're not sure. The Cancer Commission, in effect, had stated that Essiac had no merit unless she turned over the formula, and she would be subject to prosecution under the Kirby law. So I'm going to end with reading about the silent years. Rene kept her clinic open in spite of the Cancer Commission's ruling, but her patients found it more difficult and sometimes impossible to provide Rene with a written diagnosis. Rene became increasingly worried that it was only a matter of time before she'd be prosecuted and imprisoned under the Kirby bill. She closed her clinic in 1942. Her friends described her at that time as bordering on a nervous breakdown. For the time being, she had taken her fight as far as any person would against the awesome power and limitless resources of the medical establishment. She moved with her husband to North Bay until she died in 1948. She then returned to Bracebridge. Little is known about her activities at the time. We do know that in 1952, she received several urgent letters from Godfrey, APV, Winter, Baumgarten, postmarked Rome, imploring her to please provide treatment on Eva Peron, wife of the Argentinian dictator Juan Peron. She declined for reasons known only to herself. For the most part, until 1959, Rene remained out of sight. She was, isn't that Evita, right? Eva Peron. It was widely believed that she was still treating patients. Not surprising, given Rene's dedication to saving lives. One thing for certain, that the commission had not forgotten about Rene. A letter written by C.J. Telfer, Secretary of the Commission of the Investigation of Cancer Remedies, to Dr. McKinnon Phillips, Minister of Health, dated May 29, 1958, shows a continuing interest in her activities. The nurse from Bracebridge, this is a quote, the nurse from Bracebridge, who refused many years ago to divulge the formula, is apparently still using it in the treatment of cancer. The commission feels no action should be taken by them, but directed the matter to be brought to your attention in case you might wish to refer this one also to the College of Physicians and Surgeons. Dr. Phillips knew his history and did nothing, choosing, as it were, not to open up a Pandora's box. But even though Rene was not as active as she had been in the past, letters continued to arrive at her desk arrive at the desk of the Premier Leslie Frost from patients and supporters of Rene. Their content was always the same: former patients telling their stories of miraculous recoveries, supporters urgently requesting that Rene be allowed to continue saving lives of suffering humanity. In September of 1958, the Premier wrote to Rene. Here's the excerpt. It would speed up matters greatly if you would get in touch with Dr. Brown, Deputy Minister of Health, and arrange through him to give the Cancer Remedies Investigation Commission the details of your methods so the commission could go through and give them a thorough analysis. The letter reflects a person who had absolutely no understanding of Rene in her past. One wonders if the Premier was joking or had just been in a coma for the past 30 years. Did he seriously think Rene had somehow had a mysterious change of heart, or would simply now just turn over her Essiac formula to the Cancer Commission? In January of 1959, it was apparent that nurse Rene Cassie, 70, was still considered to be a threat to the establishment. Dr. M.B. Diamond, the Minister of Health, who oddly in the future would be involved with Essiac in a much different capacity, wrote to a supporter of Rene, Boyer, MPP, for the Bracebridge area. Here in part is what he had to say, and I'll close with this. Dr. McFerrin assures me that the college will not prosecute Rene without first getting in touch with my deputy minister or with me. I gathered, however, that it is their hope that Miss Rene's activities might be controlled by means of surveillance and that no prosecution would ever be necessary. Essiac was not a dead issue. They were spying on her. So I'm going to conclude my reading with that. And thanks for listening. I hope you subscribe to this channel and share with someone else. Thank you. Bye-bye.